The winter of December 1944 was unforgiving, but the cold outside was nothing compared to the freezing terror inside the windowless cargo train. For 2 weeks, the rhythmic metallic screech of the wheels against the icy tracks had been the only sound to fill the suffocating darkness. Inside the pitch-black railcar sat 40 German women. They were prisoners of war captured during the chaotic retreat of Axis forces in Europe. But unlike the thousands of male soldiers who were sent to standard, documented POW camps across the United States, these women were being treated like dangerous secrets. Clara, a 26-year-old former nurse for the German Red Cross, sat huddled in the corner. Her wrists were bound by heavy iron shackles that bit into her skin with every jolt of the train. A coarse, tight blindfold covered her eyes, a mandate enforced since they had been forced onto the train at a remote port on the East Coast. "Where are they taking us?" whispered a young woman named Elise, her voice trembling through the darkness. "They said America was civilized, but this feels like a journey to the grave." Clara leaned her head against the freezing steel wall. "Save your breath, Elise," she whispered back. "Whatever is waiting for us at the end of these tracks, they don't want the world to know about it." Clara's mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Normal POWs were protected by the Geneva Convention. They were allowed to write letters to their families through the Red Cross. But Clara and these 39 other women had been completely erased. They had been handpicked from the holding cells in Europe. Specifically, women with medical, biological, or nursing backgrounds. The mystery of their selection gnawed at Clara's sanity. Suddenly, the train's brakes screamed in protest. The violent deceleration threw the women against one another as the train ground to a heavy halt. Heavy metal latches clanked open, and the massive cargo doors slid back. A brutal blast of sub-zero wind howled into the car. "On your feet! Move! Move!" American voices barked, accompanied by the terrifying snapping of guard dogs. The women were pushed out into the deep, knee-high snow. When the guards finally sliced the blindfolds off their faces, Clara blinked against the blinding glare of high-powered searchlights. As her vision cleared, her heart sank. They were in the middle of an absolute wilderness. An ocean of towering snow-covered pine trees stretching into the black horizon. Later, she would deduce this was somewhere deep in the untamed mountains of Montana. Surrounding them were 20-foot-high fences crowned with razor wire. Heavily armed guards stood in watchtowers, their faces hidden behind thick winter masks. A wooden sign nailed to a post bore no geographic name, only a stark, classified designation, Camp 44-X. From the shadows of a guardhouse stepped an American officer. He wore a heavy wool coat and carried a grim, exhausted expression. "I am Major Hayes," he announced, his voice cutting through the wind. "Let me make this clear. As of this moment, you do not exist. Your names have been scrubbed from every registry. The Red Cross does not know you are here. If you run, you will freeze to death. If you fight, you will be shot." He paused, lighting a cigarette. The brief flash of his lighter revealed bags under his eyes. He looked less like a conqueror and more like a desperate man. "Those of you with advanced medical or nursing experience, step forward." Clara, driven by instinct, took a step forward, her chains rattling. 15 other women joined her. Hayes looked at them with a strange mixture of resentment and pleading. "You are not here to dig ditches. You are here because we uncovered a bunker in Germany a month ago. Inside it wasn't gold and it wasn't weapons. It was something biological. Our boys brought it back inside their own bodies, and it is tearing them apart." He gestured for the guards to lead the women toward a massive concrete bunker built into the side of a mountain. As they descended a long, spiraling iron staircase deep underground, the freezing air turned humid and smelled violently of copper, sweat, and rotting flesh. When the heavy steel doors of the underground facility opened, Clara gasped. It was a massive, subterranean hospital ward. But the men chained to the beds weren't German soldiers. They were Americans. There were dozens of them, writhing in pure agony. Horrific, ink-black lesions spiderwebbed across their skin. Many were violently coughing up dark blood into metal buckets. "Our doctors are dead or infected," Major Hayes said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "We know you German nurses treated a localized outbreak of this in Berlin before your lines fell. You are the only ones who know how this pathogen behaves. You will keep my men alive. If you fail, we will seal this bunker with all of you inside." Clara stood frozen. The suspense of the journey had ended, only to be replaced by a horrifying reality. She was trapped thousands of miles away from home, forced into a classified underground tomb, tasked with saving the lives of the very men who had bombed her country. The ultimate test of her humanity had just begun. The weeks that followed blurred into a continuous nightmare. Time lost its meaning in the windowless bunker of Camp 44X. Clara and the remaining German nurses worked themselves to the bone. They washed infected wounds, managed skyrocketing fevers, and held down screaming men as the mystery virus attacked their nervous systems. Despite the American soldiers being their supposed enemies, Clara found herself unable to hate them. Stripped of their uniforms and weapons, they were just terrified. Dying boys calling out for their mothers. Clara was assigned to the most critical ward, where she met a 19-year-old American private named Thomas. He had bright blue eyes that were now clouded with pain, and his young face was marred by the terrifying black veins of the virus. Every night, Thomas burned with a fever so high it threatened to melt his brain. One evening, as Clara was gently wiping the cold sweat from his forehead with a damp cloth, Thomas weakly grabbed her wrist. His grip was frail, trembling like a frightened child's. "Why?" he choked out, struggling to breathe. "Why do you help us?" "My side. We killed your people." Clara paused, a heavy lump forming in her throat. She looked down at this broken American boy, and all she could see was her own younger brother, Hans, who had been killed in the snowy trenches of Stalingrad 2 years prior. In war, old men give the orders, and young boys pay the price, Clara replied softly in her broken English. "Pain has no flag, Thomas. You are someone's son, and right now, in this room, you are just a human being who needs help." As the harsh winter dragged into spring, the situation grew desperate. The virus was mutating, becoming more aggressive. Major Hayes was losing hope. One morning, the camp doctor declared that Thomas's organs were shutting down. He wouldn't survive the next 48 hours. Clara knew of only one theoretical cure. Back in Europe, she had been accidentally exposed to a very mild, early strain of this pathogen and miraculously survived. Her immune system had fought it off, which meant her blood was swimming with the rare antibodies required to neutralize the virus. But she also knew that transferring her blood to Thomas in such large quantities, with crude underground medical equipment and limited food, would drain her own life force. It could awaken the dormant traces of the virus in her weakened body. She didn't care. The thought of watching another little brother die was more than she could bear. That night, When the guards changed shifts, Clara sneaked medical tubing into Thomas's room. She lay on the cot beside him, inserted a needle into her own arm, and connected it to his. As her dark red blood flowed through the clear tube into the dying American soldier, she felt the warmth leaving her body. She did this in secret for 3 consecutive nights, sacrificing her own vitality, drop by drop. On the 4th morning, a miracle occurred. Thomas's breathing steadied. The black lesions on his skin began to fade. His fever broke. He opened his eyes, clear and lucid for the first time in months. But Clara could not stand up to celebrate. She collapsed on the cold concrete floor. The massive blood loss had destroyed her immune system, allowing the virus to take violent hold of her body. It was May 1945. Crackling through the underground radio came the news that would change the world. Germany had surrendered. The war in Europe was officially over. The U.S. Military High Command immediately issued a burn order for Camp 44X. The war was won, and the government could not risk the public or the Soviets finding out that a biological weapon had been on American soil. The surviving soldiers were sworn to absolute secrecy under threat of treason. The camp was to be evacuated and incinerated. Thomas, still weak but able to walk, desperately searched the chaotic evacuating bunker until he found Clara. She was lying on a solitary cot, her skin as pale as marble, her breathing incredibly shallow. Thomas fell to his knees beside her, tears streaming down his face. "Clara, the war is over. You saved me. We're getting out of here. I'll tell the generals. I'll tell the newspapers. I won't let them leave you." Clara slowly turned her head. She managed a faint, fragile smile, raising a trembling, ice-cold hand to rest against Thomas's cheek. "My war is over, Thomas," she whispered, her voice like a fading wind. "They will burn this place. They will erase us. But you must live. Tell the world that even in the darkest, coldest places, humanity can survive." Clara closed her eyes, letting out one final peaceful breath as her heart stopped. Thomas was dragged away by military police screaming her name. That night, American soldiers poured gasoline over the entire underground facility. They burned it to ash, collapsing the entrance with dynamite. Every file, every name, and every trace of the German female POWs was wiped from existence. History books would never mention them. 50 years later. The winter of 1995. A 69-year-old man drove his truck down a lonely, snow-covered highway deep in the mountains of Montana. He parked on the side of the road and stepped out into the biting cold. It was Thomas. Using an old, hand-drawn map he had kept hidden for half a century, he walked miles into the dense pine forest until he reached a desolate clearing. There was nothing there, just a blanket of untouched, pristine white snow covering the collapsed, forgotten earth. With trembling hands, Thomas reached into his heavy coat pocket. He pulled out a small, tarnished silver pin, a German Red Cross badge he had secretly taken from Clara's uniform before they took him away. He knelt in the snow, his old joints aching, and gently placed the badge on a jagged piece of rock protruding from the ice. The tears that fell from his eyes were warm, defying the freezing wind around him. "They ordered us to be enemies, Clara," Thomas whispered, his voice cracking with 50 years of suppressed grief. "My country buried your name, and your country forgot you ever existed, but they couldn't erase you from me." He placed his hand over his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. "My blood is your blood. In every beat, in every breath I've taken for 50 years, you are still alive. Thomas stood up, taking one last look at the empty clearing. The wind swept through the pine trees, creating a soft, whispering sound, a silent lullaby for the unsung heroes of a hidden war, resting peacefully beneath the snow. History has a way of burying its greatest heroes in the shadows. If you believe these forgotten stories deserve to be told, please consider subscribing. We're building a community here that gives a voice to the unsung heroes of the past. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next story. Subscribe to my channel and stay connected with us, guys.